Good evening, everyone. And I want to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to the fourth annual statewide Veteran Symposium. So, for all those online and for all those tuned in to Anne Arundel County Public Television, we'd like to welcome you to this event. And I just want to say that these events don't just happen. So, I want to publicly upfront thank my Chief of Staff, Nicole Butler, and Miss Gloria Dent for helping put this together for like the fourth consecutive year. And as before I turn it over to a man who needs no introduction, that would be Secretary Tony Woods, to at least to any veterans in the state, I would just like to ask if we could take a moment of silence for our former Secretary, George Owens, who just recently passed. Thank you. For most of you know that Secretary Owens, in addition to being the former Secretary of Veterans Affairs, he was also one of the longest-serving majority whips in the House in his time in the legislature. He's combat Marine with 2 tours in Vietnam. So we just ask that you keep his family in your prayers during this very difficult time. So with that, I want to take the opportunity to introduce someone who needs no introduction in veteran circles, and that's my good friend, Secretary Anthony Woods. Secretary Woods, a combat veteran, couple tours in OEF, OIF, with degrees from Harvard, Maryland, West Point, and I'm sure he's pretty proud of that West Point pedigree. And is just in his short time, less than a year as Secretary of Veterans Affairs for Maryland, has just immersed himself. He's been all across the state. He's been a true friend of the Maryland Veterans Caucus and Maryland General Assembly Veterans Caucus. And it's just my honor and a privilege to have him on tonight to bring remarks. And then I'm going to go through each one of our caucuses and let them bring a very short greeting to all the veterans across the state who are tuned in. So, Secretary Woods, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Delegate Rogers. I really appreciate the introduction, the invitation, and for your partnership. I can't tell you how excited I am about the upcoming General Assembly because, last time we were sort of figuring out where the lights were and how to get confirmed and all those things. And now I think we have a better sense of how to be an even better partner. So I can't wait to get to work with all of you who are elected in the legislature to do great things for veterans and their families. One caveat, I'm still in my office and we've got those things that turn off the lights if I sit too still. So you'll probably see me wave my hands at some point to turn the lights back on, but don't worry about that. It really is a privilege to be here tonight, and I'm so appreciative of your efforts to support veterans in your various districts for those of you who serve in the legislature and all across the state. I'd also like to acknowledge Secretary George Owens. I actually didn't get a chance to know him well enough. Only a few interactions, one-on-one or walking around State Circle, where if you go 5 feet, you couldn't, you get stopped each and every time by somebody who just wanted to give them their best, who had impacted their lives. But I think the beautiful thing is that in my role, because I've had an opportunity to go all around the state, I actually get to meet George Owens over and over and over again in the sort of faces and interactions and the stories from veterans who've met him during his 2 terms as Secretary of Veterans Affairs. And then, of course, I think we all know on this video that he is the architect of the legislation that helped to get this passed to create the department. And he often said that he created this department, but it wasn't built yet. And he did that over 2 terms as Secretary, as I mentioned. But he did that alongside you all. And alongside the veterans across this state. So I am privileged to carry that baton and honor his legacy. I think it's fitting that this is Veterans Day, where we get to honor one of the best and most impactful veterans we've ever had in this state. So again, with that, it's my privilege to wish you happy Veterans Day on behalf of Governor Moore and my department, the Maryland Department of Veterans Affairs. I mentioned this morning, but Memorial Day in a lot of ways is what we all know is a day of reflection about those who we've lost. But Veterans Day is a day that we get a chance to honor those who served, and I think just as importantly, we get an opportunity to celebrate those who continue to serve in our communities, in our state, across the nation. And so I kind of get to celebrate this holiday year round, but this one now you all get to celebrate it with me as well. So this Veterans Day, I've been thinking a lot about the fact that we have a new generation of Americans who are home from wars abroad, with the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, which we all know dominated the last 2 decades. They're now largely over. I'd also want to point out, of course, that we have service members who are right now who are in harm's way all around the world. On any given day, I didn't realize this until General Burke had told me about this, but we actually have between 500 and 1,000 members of the Maryland National Guard who are serving on active orders, many of whom are serving right now abroad. We have Marylanders who are serving abroad on the carrier strike groups that we know that have just pulled into the Mediterranean in support of Israel, who is our closest ally in that region. We have service members who are doing rotations in the Horn of Africa, and then, of course, offering critical support to embattled partners in Europe. So I think it's appropriate, that said, to kind of reflect on the fact that we are still at a crossroads where we need to reinvest ourselves in the work of ensuring that we're providing veterans and their families with the support and the resources that they deserve right here at home. To put it simply, our entire nation sends members of the military to war, and now it's time for the entire nation to properly welcome them home. The Moore Miller administration, along with partners in the legislature, seek to do exactly that. So to share just a couple quick highlights, I wanted to point out that each and every day, my department helps Maryland veterans navigate to their very hard-earned benefits, especially veterans who may have struggled in the past to gain access to health care and be awarded disability compensation for exposure to toxins, but they are now eligible thanks to the recently passed PACT Act. And so this support comes at no cost to veterans, which I think is also important to point out, especially for those who might become victims of fraud, which is out there. I'm proud to share that we actually have updated now. We had a 94% acceptance rate last month. Now it's up to 95% acceptance rate with the VA, meaning when you work with one of our VSOs, you can be confident that you're in good hands. Another area I'd love to point out is the Maryland Veteran Trust Fund. It's providing much needed emergency assistance to veterans who have fallen on hard time and need a little bit of help getting back on their feet. So last month, the trust fund provided $93,000 of relief for things like back rent, late mortgages, and overdue utilities. One story that I've been highlighting recently is actually we recently approved an application for a veteran in the amount of $9,625. This veteran, sadly, their daughter was killed in a car accident, leaving behind three grandchildren, three children that he and his wife decided to adopt, to take in, to raise. But in order to take care of these three kids, his wife had to leave her job, meaning the family was in financial hardship. The mortgage went into foreclosure, but the trust fund was able to pay the past due balance, preventing the veteran and his family from losing their home. And thanks to Delegate Rogers and other leaders in the legislature, now that we have passed the income tax checkoff, the Maryland Veteran Trust Fund will now actually have the ability to have this impact on an even wider scale for many more veterans across the state. And we're looking forward to getting good and creative ideas from you on ways we can empower additional organizations in the form of grants that do great work for veterans all across the state. So this administration and my department also recognize there is far more to be done to honor our commitment to those who've served. And I wanted to highlight just a few areas very quickly that we're doing that. So this morning, with Delegate Rogers in attendance, we actually launched our latest initiative, which is called Maryland Joins Forces, which will mobilize partners across sectors to address challenges to our military that our military families face. This initiative will have 5 main focus areas: employment, education, health and wellness, food and housing insecurity, and then looking for opportunities to create volunteer service opportunities where members of the military connect to community, serve right alongside their civilian counterparts. I think we know the lives and careers of military families are greatly affected by service members' decision to serve in the military. So these loved ones, in my opinion, are warriors too. For years, they have persevered through intense anxiety, not knowing if empty seats at the dinner table would ever be filled again. And we can never overlook the sacrifices that they've made to support our nation. Military families, spouses, and caregivers are just as much a part of the American story as those who wear the uniform. And this new initiative is our attempt to make that clear. This morning, Governor Moore actually did two other things that I was really excited about. So the first one is he directed my department to form a commission. This idea, I think, actually, it's been in the works for a little while. I know Delegate Nick Allen also helped push this forward as well. But first, he directed my department to form a commission whose mission will be to find a fitting way to honor those who have served in the global war on terrorism. So these efforts aren't simply about building nice monuments. These are opportunities to honor those that we've lost, to ensure that we tell the stories of service that reflect the diversity of those who serve. They also encourage the next generation of service members. But I also think they serve a pretty important role of reminding the public about the sacrifices that we ask those who wear the uniform to make. And I hope that it ensures that they think differently about the decisions to go to war and that they don't take those decisions lightly. The second thing that Governor Moore did this morning is he signed an executive order that reaffirmed the state's commitment to the governor's challenge to end suicide among service members, veterans, and their families. My department is proud to work side by side with the Maryland Department of Health to address the issues of suicide within the military-connected community. So in 2020, which is the latest year that we have data, 79 Marylanders with a connection to the military died by suicide. And we saw that suicide rates within the military-connected population are actually double that of our civilian population. For many, these aren't just statistics. In 2018, I've written an op-ed about this, but my mom, an Air Force veteran, was actually counted amongst those numbers. And it's why I'm energized to do my part in keeping this preventable tragedy from impacting families across our state. So I'll just close by saying on this Veterans Day, I hope you all think about new ways that you can get involved. So many of you who are elected officials, you all have the power to make pretty sweeping changes. But those who are sort of tuning in who aren't veterans or who aren't in the legislature, I'd ask you to think of new ways to go beyond thanking a veteran for their service and instead work to find ways to make their transition into civilian life a little bit easier. Thinking about, can your company commit to hiring a military spouse to help reduce chronic unemployment or underemployment amongst a population that's actually more educated than the average, but has had their careers impacted by frequent moves by their military spouse? Can you find an opportunity to volunteer alongside members of the military-connected community? Or can you mentor someone who's fresh off of active duty? So we don't know what the future has in store, but I think we all know that men and women who serve in our military will be asked to serve in harm's way at some point, hopefully not soon, but you never know. It's on all of us to ensure that those who have served find a rightful place in our communities. Your efforts to honor those who've served will ensure future generations of service members will be willing to answer that call of duty and continue to keep our nation safe at home and abroad. So I want to say thanks so much and hope that you all enjoy the rest of this symposium and the rest of your evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Secretary Woods, and we look forward to continuing to partner with you. You've been an incredible partner. We look forward to continuing that. And if anyone ever has a chance to, I'm going to serve as Secretary Woods' agent. If you ever need a guest speaker for an event for veterans, he's your guy. I had the opportunity to hear him speak yesterday at the Reginald F. Lewis Museum. And I mean, he just tore the house down. I'm still trying to get a copy of that speech so I can plagiarize from it from time to time. But just very
over now.
Comments. So thank you for everything that you're doing. If you can stay on for a little bit, we will try to open it up for questions at the end. So there may be some folks in the audience that may have a few questions. So with that, I'm going to allow the caucus chairs. This has been a tradition for the past 4 years that we allow each one of the caucus chairs in the General Assembly to bring greetings to the veterans that are on the call. So we're going to start with the Asian Pacific Islander Caucus, and that's Delegate Harry Bendari, my good friend from Baltimore County.
Thank you. As a chair of the AAPI caucus, I would like to thank you for organizing the Maryland Veterans Symposium. A special thanks to Delegate Mike Rogers for moderating, and to Secretary Ray, Secretary Woods, and Ms. Danielle Davis for joining us. Thank you, all elected officer and fellow caucus chair who are present here. Today, we address key issues, affordable housing to support for veteran-owned businesses. These are essential steps towards honoring our veteran service. And I'm honored to come from very humble military family as well. And I'm eager to hear from our experts and to work together for our veterans' prosperity. Thank you for your commitment to this cause. Let's make this symposium a milestone for positive change. And let's enjoy the discussion. And thank you all our veterans for all of your service. And a happy Veterans Day this weekend. Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much, Delegate Bhandari. And I want to acknowledge the fact that Ms. Jessica Cook from Senator Cardin's office is dialed in to be with us this evening. So, Jessica, thank you for joining us. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to the Legislative Latino Caucus and my good friend, Delegate David Frazier-Hidalgo, who's been doing this for about 3 years now. So he's been with us from almost the very beginning, from Montgomery County. Delegate Frazier-Hidalgo.
Thank you very much, Delegate Rogers. I want to first just take a minute to acknowledge and say thank you very much to the chair. You could not be in better hands when it comes to veterans-related issues. Delegate Rogers is a very, very honorable man, and he works so hard for his constituents, and he works so hard for veterans. And I am always delighted every year when he asks if we could participate, if the Maryland Legislative Latino Caucus could participate. And I'm so delighted because it just truly is an honor to just to work with the chair. So Mike, thank you again for all you do. You're just an incredible human being. So thank you so much. With that said, the Maryland Legislative Latino Caucus is 83 members strong. We work with the Veterans Caucus on a variety of issues when we can, when things overlap. The big thing that I would just say is thank you to all of our veterans this coming Veterans Day, which is, I think, Saturday. So we're coming up on Veterans Day, and thank you for all you do. Thank you for all you've sacrificed. Thank you for all that you are sacrificing, and thank you for all that you will sacrifice. Our nation and the state of Maryland owes a great debt to our veterans. And I know that as we move forward in time, we will continue to do everything that we can to ensure that we repay those debts as best we can. And I know that your chair, Mike Rogers, will make sure that we know what we need to do to ensure that that happens. So thank you again. It's an honor to be here.
Chair Frazier-Hidalgo, thank you for those comments. Sound like in the beginning you might be looking for a co-sponsor of some bills, the way you kind of threw that out there, but you know, love serving on economic matters with you, and thank you for those greetings. Next, we're going to go to the Legislative Black Caucus of Maryland and my good friend Delegate Jamila Woods from District 26 and gorgeous Prince George's.
Thank you so much, Delegate Rogers, for this wonderful symposium. And I want to say on behalf of Chair Delegate Janelle Wilkins and the entire Legislative Black Caucus of Maryland that we are excited about these efforts to provide sustainable services for veterans. We honestly recognize that real heroes don't wear capes, and we are truly thankful for those who bravely do what they're called to do so that we may safely do what we're free to do. We are honored to have an opportunity to participate this evening and are thankful for Secretary Woods and all of those who are here today to pay tribute to our veterans, but not just to pay tribute, but to commit to assuring that our veterans receive all that they need. Again, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Delegate Woods. And so I want to transition to the chair of the Women's Caucus, my good friend, Delegate Edith Patterson, who has been fighting for veterans ever since I've been in the General Assembly and has done some wonderful things with the Women's Caucus, organizing a Veterans Day during the month of March to highlight all the things that women veterans are doing. So with that, Delegate Patterson.
Well, thank you, Delegate Rogers and Chairman Rogers, and to everyone, good evening. It's certainly my pleasure to bring greetings on behalf of the Legislative Caucus, the Women's Legislative Caucus. Not only that, but I'm also a spouse of a veteran who fought in the Persian Gulf many years ago. So it's really important for me during the campaign many years ago when I heard the challenges and concerns of women veterans. And so it was my mission once I got into Annapolis to advocate for them. And so for the past 6 years, we have honored and recognized women veterans, not to discredit the work of male veterans, but to highlight the work of women veterans. As president of the Women's Caucus, we certainly recognize that our priorities are families and women's issues. And so nothing is more congruent than looking at what are some of the challenges and how we can assist our women who served. As an aside, I want to thank Delegate Rogers for bringing ideas to us. And they have been incredible ideas, and we have had outstanding events. So I look forward to 2024. And it's my pleasure to offer legislation that will support military families and to make appreciation for the service that they have provided for so many of us. So for that, again, thank you for including the Women's Caucus, and I look forward to hearing more information from you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair Patterson, and thank you for all that you've done for Purple Star Schools legislation, as well as being one of the folks on the forefront with the commemorative day for the 6 AAA. So want to thank you for those initiatives, those pieces of legislation, and for all that I know that you'll continue to do. So at this point, it's my distinct honor to introduce someone who is doing great things in his current role. Secretary Day is the Secretary of Department of Housing and Community Development. He has led at all levels of government. You know, native son of Salisbury. You know, he's been the city council president. He's been the mayor, the 28th mayor of Salisbury. He's done a lot of things to help with revitalization downtown. But he's also a soldier. He serves currently in the United States Army, in the Maryland Army National Guard. We heard Secretary Woods earlier talk about some of those deployments, and Secretary Day has done that. He's deployed. I mean, he's a veteran of the global war on terrorism and was deployed to Somalia, Kenya, and Djibouti. I had the opportunity to hear some of his remarks today about some of the great programs that DHCD has to support veterans, but I'm going to let him talk about those and specifically some of the things that he's doing to help, some of the tools in the kit box, if you will, to help assist with veterans homelessness and other things that DHCD can do to bring to bear. So without further ado, Secretary Day.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much. Good evening. Can everyone hear me okay? All right. It is an honor to be with all of you this evening. I got to say, this is quickly becoming my favorite time of year, not only because we get to recognize all of our veterans, but I get to see Delegate Rogers and Secretary Woods much more often. So I'll be looking forward to years to come, and hopefully get to spend more time with all of you. Look, as Delegate Rogers said, I am a proud member of the Maryland Army National Guard in my other job. So I'm a soldier, and I'm grateful for the people that I've gotten to serve with. And like those of you who have served or had someone in your family who served, you know that the veterans in your life, the veterans to your left and right, if you wore the uniform, they gave something up. They sacrificed something. And in most cases, their sacrifice wasn't extraordinary, extreme, or tragic. It was the sacrifice of a civilian career or of time with family and friends and comfort and safety, and in many cases sleep. But they gave those things up, and they did it willingly. But I also think it's worth noting, and this is where I'm going to go tonight, that while we honor their sacrifice, we've got to remember that for their service, they were gifted a lot of things too. Skill sets that are valuable to rebuilding our country, rebuilding our state, rebuilding our communities. And veterans have incredible skill sets that we can put to use in getting there if we invest in them. So what I want to start out with is that most people not surprisingly, focus on the housing part of housing and community development. And it's an important part of what we do. Maryland is in a housing crisis, and its effects have left many people, including our veterans, without proper housing. The housing market is a lot like the most important game of musical chairs ever played. And when the music stops in America today, 6 million families likely won't have a place to sit down. In other words, won't have a roof over their head. And it's not at all income strata. In fact, it's the most fragile, it's the most marginalized. And shelter, I believe, ought to be treated in policy as a human right. Leaving no one behind, that mantra that Governor Moore repeats applies also to a roof over the heads of every Marylander. And so we, as humble servants, not only of the state of Maryland, but on behalf of our fellow citizens, need to be working toward that objective. So we're working at DHCD to identify measurable goals and policies that seek to solve veteran, as well as youth and chronic homelessness, and to create pathways to house persons with vulnerabilities, whether those be disabilities, whether those be, again, their status as a veteran, their age, whether that be seniors or low-income families with children. And to understand homelessness is to know this, that homelessness is ultimately a housing problem. It's at its root an economic condition. Those vulnerable populations who are most at risk of homelessness all have had a marginal to catastrophic event in their lives, but fundamentally, we are without enough housing, and the most vulnerable will remain so unless we address it. In July of this year, the department announced our Homelessness Solutions Program awards, which provided an additional $7.1 million for services and shelter for just those very individuals and families that were homeless, are homeless, or in danger of becoming homeless. We've adopted national best practices, including Housing First, rapid rehousing, and permanent supportive housing. These are evidence-based practices that have shown to dramatically reduce homelessness. Through those approaches and significant state investment, Maryland has been seeing a decline in overall homelessness, bucking a national trend even through the pandemic, 36% reduction since 2015. But we are at risk every day that we don't address the housing crisis. We are at risk of that number reversing and those trends reversing. As a mayor in Salisbury, we prioritize permanent supportive housing, starting with our veterans. And tonight, I'm proud to say that 100% of every honorably, generally, or dishonorably discharged or retired or otherwise classified veteran has permanent housing in our city through our permanent supportive housing voucher that we created. Now, there are much larger jurisdictions that have worked to tackle this problem. Salisbury's got a very, very small veteran homelessness population. However, there are jurisdictions much larger, and there are even states that are working their way toward functional zero veteran homelessness, and Maryland can join their ranks. In my work at the state, I plan to carry forward the commitment that we showed in Salisbury statewide. Really proud of some of the things that have been accomplished in recent years and that we're working to invest in more. One thing I'll call your attention to is the Project Help Veterans Village in the area of Perry Point VA Medical Center in Cecil County, which provides housing for at-risk, formerly homeless veterans and their families through VA supportive housing vouchers. Every home in that village has subsidized rent that is exclusively for the benefit of at-risk and formerly homeless veterans and their family members. We can replicate and encourage more projects like this, and I guarantee you we're working on getting close to an announcement of an expansion even at that location very, very soon. We are working hard every day to make that a reality. But I also want to note that DHCD can also help veterans in going beyond just safety and security, but really the things that every family aspires to, building generational wealth through home ownership. The Maryland Mortgage Program provides 30-year fixed rate mortgages every year for eligible first-time home buyers. We do about $1 billion in lending. Historically, more than 65% of MMP funds have gone toward minority buyers. Loan terms are competitive. They are competitive with other products in the marketplace. But what makes MMP unique is the range of associated financial incentives that we can provide. And for our veterans, we have really fantastic programs to address their educational debt if they've got it, to address down payment, closing cost assistance, and of course to reduce the amount of interest that they're paying. So really proud of that. Secondly, I want to switch to the community development side of our work and really honoring the strength, skill sets, and talents of our veterans. You know, DHCD, as our elected officials on this call know, is a lending institution. We lend in total about $2.5 billion a year in Maryland. We partner with Commerce and TEDCO, our early stage life science and technology corporation for the state, to invest in different ways, whether that be equity or venture capital focused. What I want to point out, and Delegate, we were this morning together briefly at an event celebrating veteran-owned businesses. What I want to point out is we've got an approach that says there's no wrong door for our veteran entrepreneurs, and we want to make sure that we get them to the right place. We'll help guide people to TEDCO or to Commerce's MISBIDFA programs or to other lenders, even in the private sector, to help assist them grow their business at whatever stage they're in and in whatever sector they're in. Our veterans are creative, they're hardworking, they're loyal, they're mission focused, and we want to make sure that we provide them with the answer, the right answer, and the answer needs to be yes as frequently as possible. So for anyone who is interested in starting a business or growing their business, I want to point you to dhcd.maryland.gov, which is a gateway. If you look at the businesses link at the top, tab at the top of that page, you can learn all about our programs, whether that be the state small business credit initiative, which has $198 million at its disposal in this state for entrepreneurs and small businesses in historically underserved communities, including our veterans, as well as our Neighborhood Business Works program, which is our classic business lending program. And then a really critical program that we have today called Project Restore. Project Restore is designed to fill vacant spaces in underinvested communities in this state. And our veteran entrepreneurs are ripe for this type of investment. These are grants where we provide payment to subsidize the cost of rent and even some capital improvements in vacant storefronts, vacant properties. Just in 2023, 376 businesses in the state in all 24 jurisdictions received almost $25 million in Project Restore money. More than 120 reclaimed vacant properties as a result of that in Maryland's opportunity zones, 48 in Maryland Main Street districts, representing 119 office spaces, 110 retail spaces, 61 restaurants, 41 manufacturing spaces, and 44 other spaces, including breweries, salons, indoor recreation, and event spaces. We've got all kinds of microloans and even some grant programs. So to my veteran friends, I want you to know we are ready to capitalize on your talents. We are ready to help you if you're find yourself in challenging times, whether that be homelessness, looking to own your first home, or looking to create opportunity for yourself. We recognize the skill set that you have, the very, very important skills that you have in assisting Maryland be the state we all know it can be. So I'll pause there. I'll remain available for any questions that any of you have. And I just want to say happy Veterans Day and thank you so much for including me and for your hospitality.
Secretary Day, thank you. I mean, I learned some new things today. I didn't, when I think of DHCD, I think of housing. I didn't understand, some of those, that you had some of those entrepreneurial programs that you just mentioned. And so I guess it's probably fitting that our next speaker, and I know we were all together this morning, and so it's an honor to introduce Ms. Danielle Davis, the veteran-owned small business enterprise compliance manager with the Governor's Office of Small, Minority, and Women Business. And again, we were all together this morning, so I certainly can kind of better understand the nexus. Ms. Davis, since taking on her role in November 2021, she's more than doubled the state's registration of certified veteran-owned small businesses in the database. She's digitized, the Veteran Small Business Enterprise certification process, and she's hosted many trainings on how to be successful in the state. Her father and grandfather are both U.S. Army veterans, so I know being on this call and doing what she does in her day job is near and dear to her heart. She has a passion to build communities of resources for veterans and small businesses. She's an entrepreneur herself. She hails from Anchorage, Alaska, and she's a proud HBCU graduate of Bowie State. Go Bulldogs! And I would be remiss if I didn't steal a line from James Brown and say she's the hardest working woman in the veteran-owned small minority business space. Everywhere I go, I see Danielle Davis. So thank you for what you're doing on a daily basis. And at this point, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. I can't hold that title. I feel like we are all out here doing what God has called us to do, and out here definitely representing for our veterans. So thank you so much for having me. Good evening. Yes, I am a complete Army brat hailing from Alaska, but raised in Southern Maryland. So yes, thank you so much. I'm honored to hold the position of Maryland's first veteran-owned small business enterprise program compliance manager, or what we call VSBE for short, with the Governor's Office of Small Minority and Women Business Affairs. Our office is a coordinating office within the executive department that connects the small business for-profit community to greater economic opportunities within the state of Maryland, in the state of Maryland contracting arena. Our mission is to oversee, monitor, and provide resources to our small minority, women, and veteran preference procurement programs across 70 state agencies that make up the buying for the state of Maryland. In doing so, we are a hub of information as we maintain a statewide website of resources that can be accessed to our vendors and our population 24 hours a day. These three socioeconomic preference procurement programs that are legislative mandated are tools in our veteran-owned, small, and minority-owned businesses in their tool belt when doing state contracting. So just briefly, I'm going to go over those three socioeconomic procurement preference programs, which are our Minority Business Enterprise, or MBE for short, our Small Business Reserve, or SBR program, and last but not least is our Veteran-Owned Small Business Enterprise program, or VSBE. The MBE is a prime and subcontracting program with over 8,000 certified vendors and made over 1.6 billion, yes, with a B, in awards to MBEs alone in the last fiscal year. The SBR program is a prime contracting program, and with over 4,000 certified SBR firms in our database. Now, this is a same-day certification, and they made over $432 million with an M to payments to just small businesses in this program. And the great thing about our Small Business Reserve, in addition to it being a same-day certification, is that you're only competing against other small vendors. And this has over 4,000 certified firms. Now, with our VSBE program, we are mighty, but yet strong, with over $52 million in awards in the last fiscal year to VSBEs alone, and our database is reaching almost 700. But we're not done yet. We know that there is definitely room for growth, and so we want to let you all know, if you're interested in any of these programs, you definitely want to visit our website, which is GOMD small biz.maryland spelled out.gov. And literally you will see a host of resources, trainings that we have. And so you talked about digitalizing this certification process. And I wanted to hit on that just a brief moment because a lot of our vendors feel, or small business community feel, like some of these can be daunting when going to get certifications. So I hit on the Small Business Reserve being a same day certification in our Maryland Marketplace Advantage portal, which is the site that all of the state of Maryland uses to procure any service over $15,000. So if you're interested in becoming a vendor or in any of our programs, you want to make sure that you set up an account at emma.maryland.gov. And our VSBE certification is a very easy 3-step certification of registering of a vendor in Emma, then completing a veteran verification. We have a state path, as well as we will accept a federal path if you're already certified with the U.S. Small Business Administration's Veteran Small Business Certification, or VET Cert for short, and then completing 3 easy questions in Emma, which is the VSBE application of: is your business 51% owned and operated and controlled by a veteran? Do you meet the size standards of the small business considered by the Small Business Administration? And is your business for profit? Generally, it takes about 2 to 3 business days to get that VSBE certification. So once again, very quick, very easy. And a lot of people don't know about the opportunities that we continue to create, just as we were all mentioning this breakfast this morning that we were all at. And I definitely want to thank and shout out Delegate Rogers and Secretary Day for both attending our VSBE appreciation breakfast. Our office does at least 10 different events throughout the year where we are bringing members from our state agencies and departments out to the buyers, to the vendors, so that they can meet, have that relationship, or build that relationship, so that they can tell them what opportunities are available across the entire state. And one of those was today, where we had over 22 different state agency departments and resources out to our veteran-owned VSBE community. So just very briefly over the resources that our office provides, in addition to those type of one-on-one workshops and bringing those agencies out, we also have data mining technique videos where you're able to look at this information 24 hours a day on our website, training modules, YouTube channel of recorded trainings, and a directory, a direct point for you to connect with our agency and department liaisons in all 3 of those programs, and so much more. We just recently launched today our VSBE program seal, and we also have a MBE and SBR program seal as well. We also host, in addition to events, both virtual and in person, we hold a statewide event calendar. So all the things that are going on, no matter what a small business owner is looking for, we pull all of that data together and hold it in one place, which is at the bottom of our website, clicking on our events section. And there's so many different things going on. We pull it all together from every different walk, no matter what stage your business is at. We have trainings that can assist you. So with that, I just want to thank everyone for having me, letting you know that we have a lot of support around all of our small business community. And if you want to be connected into what we're doing, make sure to visit our website, reach out to us, because we are responsive and we're here to help.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Ms. Davis. And I think I saw a question for you in the chat. And the question is, are the spouses of veteran entrepreneurs in the small business eligible for grants available under VSBE?
So currently there are no grants involved in our contracting process or program. And right now, currently, no, there are not spouses that qualify for our programs yet. However, I do work with other programs that I could also provide you information with that do support veteran spouse businesses. So I will definitely drop my email in the chat. Please make sure to email me, and I will connect you with some great resources for veteran spouse-owned businesses.
Okay. Well, at this point in the program, and we've got about 15 minutes left, I want to open it up for questions for Secretary Woods, Secretary Day, Ms. Davis. So fire away. And while you're thinking of your questions, I want to make sure that I acknowledge we also have Department of Labor on here tonight with Commissioner John Dove, who also happens to chair the Anne Arundel County Veterans Commission. So, 2 for 1. So, Commissioner Dove, thank you for joining us. And I also see the Chief of Staff for Senator Ben Brooks out of District 10 in Baltimore County. Thank you for joining us, Kim. I think I see a question from Mr. Palmer. Gary.
Thank you, sir. Gary Palmer from the Military Officers Association of America. Bob Norton and I are, Bob's the past president and I'm the current president. I wanted to add something to your thinking, and that is we're having a tremendous problem in the United States recruiting new veterans. When I say that, I mean new people to become veterans. The veteran pool is shrinking a lot, and the other options that are available to those who are at the age to join the military is that they can find a lot of other options. So as you all know, we now have a volunteer army will be responsible for the defense of the country in the future. So anything you can do to make it more attractive and less negative is great. And I really support what y'all are doing. So thank you very much.
If I could just respond to Gary's great point. I think it was actually, Secretary Day in his remarks kind of hinted at that too. We often, it's a bit of a blessing and a curse, the fact that the veteran advocacy community has been so successful at pointing out some of the challenges that veterans face when they come home and making sure folks realize that we have an obligation to address those challenges. But it does have the sort of double-edged sword effect of reminding folks that there could be challenges associated with service. But I think we don't often tell the story of the many benefits that you get as a result of that, not just in the form of benefits that the government can provide, but personally. And so that's an area that I'm excited to focus on, and I think all of us together can play a very big role in amplifying the benefits that it's had for us.
Thank you. Other questions? I see a question from Ms. Dent. Are there any HUD-VASH vouchers available for homeless veterans? And if so, how can they gain access to them?
So HUD-VASH is a critical tool for our COCs. It's a tool that we used in Salisbury. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I hope it's okay that I just jumped on that one.
No, absolutely.
But it's one of it's one of the tools that's available. It's not the only tool. I want to point out that one, there are veterans on voucher lists. The HUD voucher list, which makes you eligible even for the new state voucher program. HUD VASH is, of course, another mechanism. There are local vouchers. There are several counties as well as a few municipalities, including Salisbury, that have voucher programs. So the best method of addressing your interest in a voucher or a veteran who you know is experiencing homelessness is through the local COC. If you want to connect to me offline, if we want to talk, if you're willing to share what jurisdiction you're in, I can help connect you to those resources.
Okay. Thank you for that, Secretary Day. Secretary Woods, I think this one is for you. I see, but certain Secretary Day, certainly feel free to chime in. So Bob Norton asked, in the area of support to military families, some Maryland active duty and Guard reserve families struggle to pay for childcare on and off post. Are you working with DOD to alleviate the rising costs, especially for dual military couples?
Well, Bob, actually, the short answer right now is not yet. And I really appreciate you actually raising this to our attention. One of the things that we've been working on doing more recently, now that I've had a chance to add some additional things as things have stabilized at Charlotte Hall, is it provided me with an opportunity to start to go to actually the various military installations across our state. Since we know we have 14 of them, and they obviously provide a tremendous amount of economic activity. But it's really there where I'm starting to just now get that clear sense of the challenges that the military connected community faces and learn about the family issues. The Department of Commerce runs the Maryland Military Installation Coalition, I believe it is. And to a T, every single installation commander mentioned the issue of shortages in their child care facilities. So I mentioned food and housing insecurity as concerns. That food insecurity piece is of course exacerbated by the military spouse unemployment piece. And I think we know that the child care component of that, well, if I can't find someone to watch my kids, how can I go to work? So it's clear that it needs to come higher onto our list. We actually do have a meeting with the Department of Defense, the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Military Community and Family Policy. So that's coming up. And that'll provide us an opportunity to check in with them and see, well, what is DOD doing to address this challenge? And then what role can the state play in helping to address it as well? And then I'd love to bring that back to members of the, of course, to the governor's administration in his office, but also to the legislative, to the Veterans Caucus in the legislature, because this is a good time to see if there's anything we can do there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary.
And Mr. Secretary, I would also add, this was an issue, and so Bob, thank you for, I guess in a manner of speaking, a reminder. So the Veterans Caucus has been doing tours during the interim of our federal facilities. So we've gone to Joint Base Andrews, we've been to Pax River, we've been last week Fort Detrick. But while we're at NSA and Fort Meade, childcare came up specifically. And so I know that, myself as well as Senator Don Guile are looking at things that we can do. And so we're working with Fort Meade to see how we can make things better. It may not totally solve the problem. And I know with the DSLO, the Defense Secretary's legislative office, it's one of their top concerns. So we're trying to find ways in Maryland that we can provide help. Don't know exactly what that looks like, but we're certainly in the process of looking at some legislation where we can try to make a difference.
If I might, this is Gary Palmer again. I've tried to think about this problem a little bit, and I admit it seems to me it's a very difficult problem. What can the state government do to help them provide buildings, provide vouchers, do something, all of which costs money? And I would have to say, it probably would say, gee, that's not in our lane. but you folks have a lot more information and knowledge than I do. So I wondered if you could, perhaps Mike or perhaps Secretary Woods, give us some idea of what more specific thoughts you might have that could actually be done.
No, good points. I know that last year there was legislation that Senator Guile offered that spoke to, doing creative things to sort of kind of help with wait lists that several of the childcare facilities were facing last year, particularly at Fort Meade. So we're looking at other things that we can do creatively. But to your point earlier, finding out, working with the Department of Defense and determining what they can do to assist in that effort. And that was part of the reason that this interim, we wanted to make sure that we got out to visit the installations to see what some of those concerns are. We had a great visit at Walter Reed, and they provided a lot of things where we could help, where we could advocate at the state level. So we're looking at some of those things, and so more to follow. I think Delegate Patterson wanted to say something.
I just wanted to say, and I have to get off in a minute, that in terms of licensing, last year, Senator Guile on the Senate and myself on the House side sponsored an exemption whereby daycare centers or childcare centers would be exempt from having to apply for licensure dually through the state as well as through the military bases. And that helped a lot. We also had a chance to speak with Secretary Wu, and Mr. Dove is I know online here as well. It was interesting to note that some of the initiatives that she suggests had to do with licensing to fill some of the void. And I think that legislatively, we will work very closely with with the administration to make sure that some of these gaps will be filled. And please note that the Women's Caucus, one of our priorities will continue to be looking at ways to make childcare affordable. There are grants, there are scholarships that we offered. We're concerned about whether or not we'll have those fundings available for them. So on base and off base, please know that childcare continues to be a priority for us.
And I did put the link for that bill in the chat.
Yep. I don't know, Mr. Dove, did you want to comment from the Department of Labor perspective?
1 second.
Did I put him on the spot? I'm sorry.
Yes, you did. And I'm going to do exactly what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to defer to Secretary Woods, who has the global perspective of what's going on.
Okay, great.
Well, yeah, I came off mute because I was going to give a shout out to Commissioner Dove for his work. We've actually are working quickly. I know we're close to time here, but we're actually working quickly to comply with the recently, well, it was passed in January, a federal law that essentially said that states need to provide license reciprocity for military service members and spouses who move from other states into Maryland and vice versa. The Department of Justice put out a letter essentially providing guidance in July. And then Commissioner Dove, Secretary Wu, Secretary Herrera-Scott, forgetting who else, but we essentially worked with anyone who oversees a license, a licensure board or body, of which I actually think it's Health, who has 26. So I think they may have the most, but we're very happy to report that, Labor jumped on it, Health jumped on it, and essentially all but 2 are now in compliance, where they know to honor the license for someone coming in from out of state. And the 2 that are not in compliance, they will do the same thing, but in a manual process. And so they will immediately respect that and honor that. And then I know Commissioner Dove is also doing great work around expediting licensure, which is also another challenge. So we do think that will certainly help. One thing that I've found interesting in learning about this is that DoD, when they have childcare professionals who work on the installation, they actually are certified at a pretty significant standard. I think it's a Montessori standard, which is higher than sort of the average. And so that also creates one of the challenges. But I do think our efforts to increase minimum wages also do help to make this a more attractive field, but that also does create competition across a variety of fields. So much more to explore on this one, and excited to continue to dig into this.
So thank you for that response, Secretary Woods, and let the record reflect that that was really a situation of the Army once again bailing out the Marines, because that's what we do. But I will wish the Marines happy birthday in advance. It's the Marine Corps birthday tomorrow, so happy birthday to all the Marines on the call. And I did want to take an opportunity before we close just to let everyone know, for those that didn't know, that November is Military Family Appreciation Month. And that's a time when America honors and recognizes the unique sacrifices and challenges family members make to support their loved ones in uniform. One of the greatest strengths of our nation is our military service members, and their strength is their families. So I ask that you just keep that in mind, not only for tomorrow, not only for Saturday, but for the entire month, and quite frankly, for the year. And so with that, I just want to say thank you again to Secretary Woods, Secretary Day, for my colleagues that were able to join in. And I see that Bob Norton has his hand. Oh, he put his hand down. Okay, so Bob, your hand went down. Okay, all right. But really appreciate everyone tuning in. If you have suggestions for ideas that you want discussed next year, let us know. We're happy to have folks come on the call that can bring the information and knowledge that you're really looking for. Again, thank you to all my colleagues for joining. Special shout out to my Chief of Staff, Nicole Butler, and Entrepreneur of the Year, Gloria Dent, and who was an honoree this morning at Daniel Davis's event. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and sign off. And thank you everyone for their service.